Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
I'm Egbert, the owner of this station. Check out my website at egbert.com. That's E-G-G-B-U-R-T, egbert.com. Now it's back to Brad and John. Check out their website at bjshow.co. The BJ Show? Come on, guys. Anyway, here's B and J.
Sort of like your mom and dad not approving of what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? When the boss man sort of gives you that sort of like, hey, what are you doing, guys, right?
One of the theories of developmental psychology, Brad, is that a man has to slay his father. You know, you have to overcome whatever your father's expectations were and do it by yourself, Brad. And I feel we get a little bit of that from Egbert. You know, he sets that level and we have to slay his expectations and set our own standard, Brad.
John, you're a real deep thinker. You talk about meat shields and slaying your father and things like that.
Well, you know, I derive most of that wisdom from professional wrestling, Brad. So that's why I'm so deep. And I mean, what a world with Vince McMahon. I don't know if you followed any of this story over the last month or so, but it's a doozy.
Well, he's like he resigned from the chairmanship, supposedly due to a sexual harassment deal. Isn't that what it is?
Yeah. Apparently allegedly misusing company money to settle some of these, NDAs and allegations. And then this most recent woman makes some outrageous allegations. So anyway, neither here nor there, but still wild.
Now he's not married anymore, is he? Or is he still married?
I believe he's still married. Yeah.
Okay, because his wife is like big wig in the business as well too, isn't she? Like.
Oh yeah, she was, and she was a cabinet appointee under Donald Trump.
That's
Linda
right.
McMahon, yeah.
I forgot
and
about
she
that.
ran unsuccessfully for, either Senate. I think she ran for U.S. Senate one time.
Interesting. So he's
anyway.
He's essentially taken the back seat, right?
Yeah, and so the whole thing with WWE, and he stepped aside, I believe, 2 years ago as well, is that he still pulls the strings. What the conventional wisdom is that he still makes all the key decisions, even though he doesn't have a title anymore. And the man will have control of that company until he's 6 feet deep.
Well, it's a fascinating company because of the fact that, I don't know if you know the history of wrestling. Here we start the show off talking about wrestling, but wrestling used to be a bunch of regional circuits. You know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about back in the day?
Yeah, I'm pretty familiar with this.
Because, for example, Wrestling at the Chase was a local promoter by the name of Sam Muchnick. And Sam Muchnick. Yeah, he ran the Missouri territory, and they were all they were a conglomeration of territories under the National Wrestling Alliance. Right.
So Muchnick ran this area. Kansas City was Central States, ran by Bob Geigel. Everybody had their regional territory.
But they sort of run their own little operation, so to speak.
Correct. You're absolutely right.
Right.
I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. A weird story. Years ago, I had an attorney that I was working with, and his name was not his wife's name. She had kept her name on marriage, like as some women do, which I have no problem with, be honest with you. I think that makes more sense, to be honest with you. Nowadays, the way we have all these blended marriages and things like that. Hey, just let's not make things complicated, because I know women who have had, matter of fact, I know one particular woman in the radio business who's had 4 last names since I've known her, because she had her original name, then she had her air name, then she got married once, and she got married twice, and every time she changed her name. Okay, so the point of this was that where was I going with this? I can't remember.
It was Sam Muchnick. In the local territory.
He introduces me
Wrestling at the Chase. Yeah.
He introduces me to his wife one day, and he says, "This is my wife, Katie Muchnick." And I say, "You in relation to Sam?" She says, "That's my father."
Wow, no way.
Yes. Now, the interesting thing was how I met her, because he wanted me to meet her because she ran her own company at the time. I don't think that was the name of the company, but she's the one who started the St. Louis Small Business Monthly. And
oh, no way.
yes,
Okay.
originally it was like a little mailer she sent out like once a month or something like that. It was like almost like, you know how like in the printing business you can get, what is it, like 8.5 by 17-inch piece of paper, and they print it and essentially you fold it in half and it gives you four pages. You know what I mean? Like almost like a menu kind of thing. And that's what she did. And then she ultimately sold it, and it's been sold a couple times. The guy who runs it right now is a really nice guy. We deal with him twice a year when he does the St. Louis Small Business Expo at the Family Arena. It's always a great time and always a lot of good people out there. Okay, we start the show, even though today is a holiday and we're probably the only few of the ones that are working. You know, it's interesting. You tune around the radio dial, and most of the, quote, A talent is off today. They're either running best ofs or they're running, you know, the weekend people are, hey, I get to do mornings, Monday mornings. So we are the B talent all the time.
I would put us at like D or E, right, Brad?
Way down there. And every morning we start out with John Combest's Top 3. Now, what John does is this website for 22 plus years. He scans all the websites. He knows all the places to find all this stuff. Sometimes it's not even a website. Sometimes people call him. Sometimes people email him and text him and things like that. And he puts together this list, and he puts together backlinks to all the different sites around the state. And we start off each day by doing the top 3. And we have our guest announcer who comes in and says to me,
and here they are.
And we start the countdown with,
in third place,
according to the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, somebody is standing up against a large local nonprofit and saying it is no fair that nonprofit doesn't pay property taxes, that gets a free ride, that uses a ton of land that could be used by good, productive corporations. Welcome to BJShow.co's new game, Who Said It? Brad Hildebrand or the St. Louis Democratic Socialists of America?
Well,
what do you think I'm talking about, Brad?
How about both?
How about both? Talk about politics making strange bedfellows. Brad may agree with the St. Louis Democratic Socialists of America here. According to the Post-Dispatch, the group is making a ruckus about the fact that good St. Louis citizen, Washington University in St. Louis, has a ton of land for which it is completely tax exempt. And the argument is that all that property robs University City and St. Louis City of what could be very productive taxpayer land and taxpayer dollars.
Well, you know what? I agree 100%.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, isn't it?
Well, I've told this story before, and I don't know if you've heard this or not, but the reason that, and once again, I swear I read this in a history book, and it talked about the reason the United States does not tax church properties. Do you know the reason behind this?
No, I don't.
Because most of the founding fathers were from England. And in England, one of the reasons that a lot of them came to the United States was freedom of religion, because you were forced into the Church of England. There was no alternative church. You went to the Church of England.
Yeah.
There was no, you didn't have a choice, okay? So because the church essentially was part of the government structure, and I think it still is to this day, that they don't tax. It would be like St. Louis County taxing the city of O'Fallon, because it's a government entity onto itself.
I get it. Yeah,
so in
I
other
get
words,
it. Okay.
it doesn't make any sense, because the money would just go like in circles, because of the fact that, you know, if you know what I'm saying, you're going to take the tax money in and you're going to send it right back to the city. So supposedly that's the reason. It's a carryover from the founding fathers, from the religion aspect of the Church of England, where they all came from Great Britain.
Wow. So I didn't know that was the origin of it. Well, what's interesting here is that apparently University City studied this. It looks like around 2018, I believe, is what the piece said. It's by Blythe Bernard from the Post-Dispatch. And so the group had a meeting last night in U City. I haven't seen any coverage via TV, radio, or print about what came out of that meeting. Of course, it is a Sunday, and most media people wouldn't be bothered to work on a Sunday. But the piece is really interesting because, it makes you think. The piece shows a map of all of WashU's properties in U City and all the tax-exempt properties. And so to me, it's fascinating because if you look at, and I have in front of me here a copy of December's Washington University magazine that touts all of its local initiatives, excuse me, and how much it does for the local community. And there's only so much money even that a university has. And I know that WashU has a huge endowment, but for every project that WashU WashU fund, like the money, if WashU starts paying taxes in U City, the money's going to come from somewhere. So if WashU is paying some feel-good reading program in the inner city or somewhere, for minorities or whatever woke projects are going on, the money's going to come from somewhere. So I don't know. I'd be pretty cautious if I was the Democratic Socialists of America, thinking that you're really going to stick it to the man, when WashU, I wouldn't say, really is the man.
Well, now, hold on a minute. So in other words, you're saying that they're going to eliminate programs that they do to pay their taxes?
Well, no, what I'm saying is that for everything that WashU does today, that it funds out of its budget today. And let's be honest, WashU funds a ton of projects in the St. Louis area. They put their staff and their personnel to do community work. They work with community organizations. And so if WashU has to start taking a chunk of money and actually paying taxes on the property it owns, the money's going to come from somewhere, Brad. It's not like they're going to cut staff to make up for that.
Let's do our due diligence here. John, what college did you graduate from?
Washington University. So, and hey, now, as you know, Brad, and everybody who's listened to the show knows, I don't come on here ringing the bell for WashU. And, I compare this, once again, this is another example of, like, I'm taken back to the 80s, and I put on WGN, and I see the Cubs playing the Mets, and it's like, can't both sides lose? Like, I don't know who to root for in this fight. But WashU, even a general WashU cynic like me would point out the fact that the group does so much good for the local community in terms of, and it's stuff that's not even woke. It's stuff that's not even community activism. It's helping reading programs. It's helping economic development. And if WashU has to start paying taxes, then that stuff goes away.
John, we need to revisit this, so let's move on with the countdown. And as soon as we get done with the countdown, we will pick this back up because I have some choice comments to make about that. Okay.
Nice.
Here we go.
Up a notch to number 2.
Are you tired of hearing about packs of marauding mobs and thieving thugs roaming neighborhoods at night, testing car door handles to see if they can break in? Well, State Representative Jim Murphy of St. Louis County is tired of it too. He has a bill that will be debated in committee soon that would make walking around, prowling neighborhoods, testing door handles a Class E felony. Now, Representative Murphy says that there are no laws on the books in terms of state statute that prohibit this type of behavior, and any type of ordinance that prohibits or that catches these thieves. He said that the penalty for it is too minuscule as it is, and we need stiffer penalties for breaking into cars.
Well, okay, now I agree with breaking into the cars, but let's go back for a minute. Okay, maybe I'm the guy who is the libertarian, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, so let's say you've got a group of teenagers who were walking around in the neighborhood just having a good time talking. Let's say they're pre-16, so they can't drive, and they're just walking around having a good time. Okay, can the police come and say, wait, we're taking you in for Class D felonies? You're not supposed to be walking around at night. Get what I'm saying? I mean, there comes a point.
I completely do. But I mean, I think the difference is with cameras now, you could see a roving pack, a marauding mob testing out car doors. You would have that on camera, and if you could identify them. But see, I think it's a difference between like a stop and frisk mentality, Brad, which I don't think Jim Murphy is proposing here, or cops just grabbing kids and saying, hey, quit walking around the neighborhood, versus actually seeing kids testing car door handles and getting into cars.
Okay, I'm no expert on this, and I'm no police officer, but the videos I have seen, and it's interesting. Matter of fact, if anybody knows more about this, you can call my cell phone. We'll put you on the air, 314-280-8880. Once again, 314-280-8880. Most of the security camera and the Ring cameras, the doorbell cameras I've seen that shows this behavior it's typically somebody in a car with like 3 or 4 guys, and they pull into a neighborhood, then they jump out of the car and they run around and check all the door handles, and if they don't find any, they jump back in the car and they move on down the street. So it's not really like a marauding gang or something like that. I see, I think here we go again. This is a politician who is getting grief because of the fact that people are saying, why can't you stop these people from breaking into our cars? So he comes up with this legislation, which I think is like Swiss cheese. It has tons of holes in it, and it's never going to work. But that's just me, right?
Interesting. Okay, well, that's a little bit of pushback for Representative Jim Murphy there.
But see,
I bet he will take that into consideration,
But
Brad.
what are you going to do? I mean, short of having police officers stationed, block by block in a subdivision at night, I don't think there's much you can do about it. You know what I mean?
His anecdote was interesting. He said that with the invention now of so many cameras, he said that a lot of these thieves, they'll show their weapons, daring you to come out. Now, I never thought of that.
Do you mean the homeowners?
No, that the thieves would flash their guns. In other words, to say to homeowners, don't even think of coming out.
That's what I
because
mean.
we're
In other
armed.
words, they're gonna if you got a Ring camera, they're gonna wave their gun around, go, hey, look at what I got. You better not come out. Girl.
Yeah, don't you dare try to intercept this thievery.
People are brazen. Okay, and now
The number one.
it's the number one John
Straight
Combest
from
topic.
our mouth on Friday into the Kansas City mayor's mouth 2 hours later, Brad. On Friday morning, you and I, in the wake of the Kansas City shooting that took place on Wednesday, you and I talked about how the governor appeared on Pete Mundo's show Thursday and dared utter the word thugs to describe the shooters at the KC parade. 2 hours later, after our conversation on Friday, Brad, KC Mayor Quentin Lucas was on Steve Kraski's show on KCUR, public radio in Kansas City, and he said that the governor should not have used the word thugs and that the governor was using a, quote, dog whistle that Quentin Lucas has seen before to, in a racist way, suggest that the criminals, might be thuggish or, God forbid, might be black. So we discussed it Friday, Brad, and you'll recall I said that somebody would have a hissy fit about the governor's word choice, and 2 hours later across the state it happened.
Okay, John, let me ask you a question. Have you ever watched The Sopranos?
Absolutely. I've seen every episode.
Okay, if you were to categorize the people, the men who were involved, Tony Soprano and his whole gang of merrymakers, what word would you call them?
Thugs.
Exactly. That's what I say.
Absolutely. And you know what? All of their capos are thugs. All of their soldiers
Right.
are thugs. All of their associates and friends of ours are thugs.
Right. And it's not a racial
Absolutely.
thing. To me, it's like, okay, everybody's just gotten so tightly wound. You know what I mean? Like, and you know what? If there's a phrase that I hate nowadays, it's dog whistle. I mean,
absolutely. I'm right there with you.
that's like saying, hey, that's like saying, I'm going to go eat some pastrami, and people go, right, oh, he must be Jewish. It's a dog whistle. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? It's like,
Yeah, or man, I hate Fazoli's spaghetti.
Right.
It's so runny. And people say, what an anti-Italian
right.
slur.
Exactly. It's like,
That's a dog whistle.
That's a
against the
dog
Italians.
whistle.
Now, Brad, the best part about this whole thing, and I know we're close to time here, the best part about the whole thing is a month ago yesterday, the mayor was on Pete Mundo's show, and he was describing another shooting in the city, and here's what he called it. He said, a segment of our society, and he used the word hooliganism. Yeah. Now, it's okay for the mayor of Kansas City to call young black men hooligans and call them a segment of our society, but God forbid somebody drop the T word. You can't say thug because that's not okay.
well, now, what's interesting, the word hooligan was one of those words that sort of disappeared from our language. And you know who brought it back into my realm?
Who's that?
My son, my oldest son, Brett.
Oh, I love the word hooligan.
He
I
would-
believe it. Yeah, I'm glad your son uses it.
He would call, matter of fact, the what they call them, the Midnight Boys. Do you know this whole story? What they call the Midnight Boys?
No, I don't.
Let's talk about this next break. Man, I got stuff to talk about. Okay, here's
Great. Let's do it.
Here's what I got queued up for our next break. First off, we're going to talk about Taylor Swift, and I have a real reason to talk about this because I have a theory, and the more I think about this, the more I see what happens. I think I'm 100% right.
Okay.
Property tax, and then we're all going to talk about the word thugs because
Yes.
I'm glad I didn't bait you when I asked you about Tony Soprano, but they're a bunch of white dudes, and they're thugs. You know what I'm saying?
Let's do it.
Okay, we're going to take a break. We will be back. And by the way, this is a short break, and that's my own damn fault. There's a whole story behind it, which I won't bore you with. And we're going to take a break.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of The Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?